On July 9th, 1968, in a lab down in Maryland, USA, there came to be what they called Universe 25, cooked up by a guy named John Calhoun. He tossed in 4 male and 4 female mice into this Universe 25, gave them all-you-can-eat food, water, and shielded them from the nasty stuff like diseases, bad weather, and traps. So, Universe 25 became this mice paradise, or so it seemed. But there was a snag in this paradise-limited space. It could only hold a max of 3,840 mice. Imagine that. Universe 25 was like a square box, about 1.3 meters tall, with a base around 2.6 meters wide. Inside, there were tunnels and rooms for the mice to roam and chill. And that's where the experiment kicked off. What nobody saw coming was that within a few years, all 8 of the original mice and their offspring kicked the bucket, not a single one left. And throughout this time, Universe 25 stayed the same, no changes in its environment or resources. So humans set up this mice heaven, but the mice turned it into a living nightmare, leading to their extinction. The whole process of mice fading away in this hellhole was gut-wrenching. Before we dive into this gut-wrenching story, let's talk about the brains behind Universe 25, John Calhoun, and why he cooked up this experiment. Calhoun's early days were spent in Tennessee, doing fun stuff like catching critters and getting curious about the big questions like God. All that curiosity led him to bag a PhD. At 26, he began working for the Maryland government, studying the behavior of Norway rats, the state's major pests at that time. At 30, he built a 1.5-acre rat city behind his house, intending to accommodate up to 5,000 rats. However, within 2 years, he observed that the rat population never exceeded 150. Whenever it neared this number, an invisible pressure, like the hand of God, influenced the rat's behavior. Even though you couldn't see it, this hand of God changed how the rats acted. Showing its presence in their actions, they stopped wanting to make baby rats, started acting strange, and spent time doing weird stuff like rolling dirt balls instead of doing normal rat stuff, like digging tunnels or building homes. They went from friendly to fighty until their numbers dropped, and then everything went back to normal, like the hand vanished. Let's call this unseen hand the hand of God. This phenomenon fascinated Calhoun, as it seemed to control the collective thinking of rats. The mechanism triggering this hand of God seemed related to population size and density. So, Calhoun kept building bigger and fancier rat cities, always keeping an eye out for that hand of God. He thought it might be caused by outside pressures, and whether it would chill out or vanish in a perfect utopia had some big implications, especially with humans building up cities real fast, seeing as both humans and rats are social critters. In the 1940s, after World War II, there was a rapid development of urbanization among humans. The research on the hand of God in rat cities became particularly valuable. So, the U.S. National Institute of Mental Health jumped in and threw their weight behind Calhoun's research. Fast forward to 1954, when Calhoun hit 37, his rat city was like a mouse paradise on steroids. It had all the bells and whistles, fancy setups, climbing walls, food funnels for the whole gang, and even tiny mouse apartments. These mouse paradises were like mini-cities. No one bothered each other. Resources were plenty, manners were top-notch, and entertainment was on point. But guess what? No matter how sweet it all seemed, the hand of God showed up every time. After over 20 years of studying these paradises, Calhoun started going a bit nuts. He wrote about how increasing population density inevitably messed with behavior. He transitioned from being a rational biologist to sounding increasingly eccentric. All right, fast forward to 1968, we step into John Calhoun's masterfully crafted mouse utopia, known as Universe 25. Calhoun was determined to unlock the secrets of the hand of God using a rational approach. On July 9th, 1968, the first 8 mice moved into this utopia, and by late October, the first baby mouse was born. From then on, the mouse population doubled every 2 months, 20, 40, 80, and so on. Babies grew up, had their own babies, and soon it was a mouse dynasty. This was the golden age of the mouse utopia. By August 1969, the population soared to 620 mice. But like all paradises on the brink, the hand of God came down. As the new generation matured, many couldn't find mates or their place in society. The older mice, with partners and families, still ran the show. The females who found partners moved to higher-up apartments, living alone, away from family and society, even avoiding neighbors. The mateless males gathered at the center of the universe, where food and water were plentiful. They had loads of friends and entertainment, but were still restless, anxious, and weak, eventually turning on each other. At the same time, the established older generation continued expanding their families, but showed odd behaviors, like constantly relocating nests to avoid perceived threats. They kicked babies out of nests early, making them part of the new generation at the center or the top. In this perfect utopia, the new generation's fear exceeded all expectations. They spent all their time eating, sleeping, and grooming. No more fights or mating. These mice were totally transformed. Calhoun attempted to reintegrate them into a normal mouse society, but they seemed utterly lost, forgetting their instincts. In the original rat cities, these instinct-forgetting new-gen mice would eventually decrease, and the hand of God would leave. They'd reintegrate into mouse society. But in the perfect universe, 25 Utopia, things went haywire. The new-gen mice lived on the fringes of mouse society. At its peak, 2,000 mice lived there. But they all turned into this weird new generation that refused to breed, and the entire mouse society collapsed. By May 1970, the Utopia barely lasted 2 years before the last baby was born, after which no females desired to reproduce. Finally, on a day in 1973, the last resident of Universe 25 passed away, marking the complete end of this mouse utopia. The mouse utopia met a quicker demise than its predecessors, the mouse paradises in cities. In less than 5 years, the behavior of the new generation drove Calhoun to complete despair, which he termed behavioral sink. In the early phase when the hand of God first intervened, mouse families expelled pups before weaning. Young mice turned aggressive towards each other. Abnormal behaviors increased among the young. Normal males couldn't protect females in their territories. Females became aggressive. Young mice stopped resisting attacks and became submissive.
As the hand of God continued its grip on the mouse utopia, further behavioral sink stages unfolded. Females refused to reproduce. Males withdrew completely, avoiding fights and mating. Solitary activities like eating, sleeping, grooming, and pursuing solitude became prevalent among males. These males had smooth fur without scars, described as beautiful ones, accompanying the apocalypse. These 10 stages of behavioral sink shattered Calhoun's mental world. When he documented over 20 years of research in 1973, he allocated a significant portion of the beginning to discuss the Book of Revelation, using italics to emphasize its content. This inclusion of biblical references irked both scientists and theologians. Scientists were like, dude, stick to science. And theologians were offended that he compared mouse behavior to human destiny, it as an insult to God, worse than Darwin's theories. After 1973, the experiment got shut down, and Universe 25 became history. But the experiment remains a chilling reminder of the potential consequences of unchecked population growth and social alienation. All right, that's the end of today's story. See you next time.